May 15th, 2023, 11:47 p.m. Jessica Martin is celebrating her 38th birthday at her own home. 25 guests are there. Friends, colleagues, family. The cake has been cut. Presents have been opened. Everyone is having a good time. Jessica looks tired. "I'm going upstairs to rest for a bit. I'll be back down soon," she says. She walks up the stairs to her second-floor bedroom. She never comes back down. At 1:15 a.m., her best friend gets worried and goes upstairs to check. She opens the bedroom door. The room is empty. The bed is made. The window is closed. Jessica's phone, purse, wallet, and keys are sitting on the nightstand, but Jessica is gone. 25 people in the house. Nobody heard anything. Nobody saw anything. Security cameras show no one leaving the property. Police arrive and begin searching. In the garage, they make a shocking discovery. Jessica's car has been freshly washed. In the trunk, there are traces of soil. DNA testing reveals something disturbing. The soil didn't come from Jessica's garden. It came from a forest area 40 miles away. So here's the question. How did Jessica leave her own house? Where did she go? And why did she disappear in the middle of her own birthday party? This is the story of a woman who vanished in front of 25 witnesses. And the truth? It's more complicated than anyone expected. Jessica Marie Martin was born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1985. She studied law at Boston University and graduated with honors in 2007. She worked as a criminal defense attorney at a prestigious law firm called Morrison and Associates in downtown Boston. Jessica was known as a dedicated professional. She handled high-profile cases. She had a reputation for being thorough, detail-oriented, and fiercely protective of her clients. Her colleagues described her as someone who worked long hours and rarely took vacations. Jessica wasn't married. She didn't have children. She lived alone in a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Boston. She'd purchased the house in 2019. It was a nice property with a 2-car garage, a backyard, and a security system with cameras covering the front entrance and driveway. Jessica had close friends, but she kept her personal life private. Even her best friend, Amanda Brooks, admitted that Jessica didn't talk much about her past or her family. She was always professional, always put together, Amanda said, but there was a part of her life she never really shared with anyone. On May 15th, 2023, Jessica decided to throw a birthday party at her house. She invited 25 people, co-workers from the law firm, a few college friends, some neighbors, and her younger sister, Claire. The party started at 7 p.m. Guests arrived gradually throughout the evening. By 9 p.m., everyone was there. The atmosphere was relaxed. Music was playing. People were eating, drinking, talking. Jessica seemed happy. She was smiling, laughing, mingling with her guests. At 10:30 p.m., the cake was brought out. It was a chocolate cake with white frosting and the words, "Happy 38th birthday, Jessica," written in blue letters. Everyone sang happy birthday. Jessica blew out the candles. Photographs were taken. Jessica opened a few presents. Everything seemed normal. But around 11:30 p.m., some guests noticed that Jessica looked tired. Her sister Claire later told police that Jessica had seemed distracted during the party. She kept checking her phone, Claire said. "I asked her if everything was okay. Said yes, but she didn't seem like herself." At 11:47 p.m., Jessica made an announcement. "I'm going upstairs to rest for a bit. I'm exhausted. Please, everyone, keep enjoying the party. I'll be back down soon." Several guests offered to leave so Jessica could rest, but Jessica insisted they stay. No, please don't go. I just need 20 minutes. Keep the party going." Jessica walked up the stairs to the second floor. She went into her bedroom and closed the door. That was the last time anyone saw her. At first, nobody was worried. Jessica had said she'd be back down soon. Guests continued talking, eating, cleaning up a bit. The party atmosphere gradually wound down. By 12:45 a.m., most of the guests were preparing to leave. Amanda Brooks, Jessica's best friend, suggested they should say goodbye to Jessica before leaving. A few guests agreed. At 1:15 a.m., Amanda went upstairs and knocked on Jessica's bedroom door. No answer. She knocked again. Still no answer. Amanda opened the door. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made. The window was closed and locked from the inside. The closet door was shut. Everything looked normal, but Jessica wasn't there. On the nightstand, Amanda saw Jessica's phone, her purse, her wallet, her house keys, her car keys, all sitting there, untouched. Amanda called out for Jessica. No response. She checked the bathroom. Empty. She checked the other bedrooms on the second floor. Empty. Amanda went back downstairs and told the other guests, "I can't find Jessica. She's not in her room." At first, some guests thought maybe Jessica had gone outside for fresh air, but when they checked the backyard, she wasn't there. They checked the front yard, the driveway, the street. No sign of Jessica. Someone suggested checking the basement. A group of guests went down to look. The basement was dark, quiet, and empty. No Jessica. At 1:35 a.m., Amanda called 911. Officers from the Boston Police Department arrived at 1:52 a.m. They immediately began a systematic search of the property. Every room, every closet, the attic, the basement, the garage, the backyard. Jessica was nowhere to be found. Detective Thomas Reed took charge of the investigation. He's a 20-year veteran of the force with extensive experience in missing persons cases. His first step was to interview the 25 guests who had been at the party. Every single guest gave the same basic account. Jessica had gone upstairs around 11:47 p.m. Nobody heard anything unusual after that. Nobody saw Jessica come back downstairs. Nobody saw her leave the house. Detective Reed checked the security cameras. Jessica's house had 2 cameras, one covering the front door and driveway, and one covering the side entrance near the garage. The footage was clear. Between 11:47 p.m. and 1:15 a.m., nobody entered or exited the house through either entrance. The cameras showed guests leaving after 1:15 a.m., but there was no footage of Jessica leaving at any point. So here's where things get strange. Jessica went upstairs. Her phone and keys were left behind. The security cameras show nobody leaving the house, but Jessica was gone. Detective Reed asked the obvious question. Were there other exits from the house? There was a back door leading to the backyard, but it was locked from the inside. There were windows on the second floor, but they were all closed and locked. The basement had a small window, but it was too small for an adult to fit through. Unless Jessica found a way to vanish into thin air, Detective Reed told his team, she had to have left this house somehow. We just need to figure out how. On the morning of May 16th, investigators returned to Jessica's house for a more thorough search. They focused on areas that hadn't been carefully examined during the initial response. In the garage, they made an important discovery. Jessica's car, a silver Honda Accord, was parked inside. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. But when investigators looked more closely, they noticed something. The car was extremely clean. The exterior had been recently washed and waxed. The interior was spotless. Detective Reed found this strange. According to Jessica's sister Claire, Jessica rarely washed her car. She was always too busy with work, Claire said. Her car was usually kind of messy inside. Officers opened the trunk of the car. Inside, they found a yoga mat, a reusable shopping bag, and a pair of running shoes. Nothing unusual. But then forensics noticed something in the trunk lining. Small traces of soil. The soil samples were collected and sent to the state crime lab for analysis. Results came back 2 days later. The soil was a specific type found in forested areas. It contained pine needles, decomposed leaves, and a particular mineral composition. The lab ran comparisons with soil samples from various locations around Boston. The match came from a forest preserve called Whispering Pines, located about 40 miles north of Boston. Detective Reed was puzzled. Why would there be soil from Whispering Pines in Jessica's trunk? Had she been there recently? And if so, why? While the soil analysis was being conducted, Detective Reed obtained a warrant for Jessica's phone records. Since Jessica's actual phone was still sitting on her nightstand, investigators were able to access her call history, text messages, and location data. The phone records revealed something interesting. On May 15th, the day of her birthday party, Jessica had made several phone calls. Most were routine, confirming party details with caterers, calling guests to remind them about the party. But there was one call that stood out. At 3:17 p.m., Jessica had called a number that wasn't saved in her contacts. The call lasted 11 minutes. Detective Reed traced the number. It belonged to a woman named Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a psychologist with a private practice in downtown Boston. Officers contacted Dr. Mitchell. Initially, she was hesitant to discuss her patients due to confidentiality, but when Detective Reed explained that this was a missing persons case, Dr. Mitchell cooperated within legal boundaries. Jessica Martin was my patient, Dr. Mitchell confirmed. She'd been seeing me for about 6 months. I can't discuss the details of our sessions, but I can tell you that Jessica called me on May 15th. She was anxious about something. She said she needed to make a difficult decision. Detective Reed asked what kind of decision. Dr. Mitchell couldn't provide specifics, but she did say this. Jessica was dealing with something from her past, something that had been weighing on her for years. She was considering whether to confront it or continue avoiding it. Detective Reed decided to interview Jessica's sister, Claire Martin, more thoroughly. Claire was 34 years old, 4 years younger than Jessica. She worked as a teacher at an elementary school. Claire told Detective Reed that she and Jessica had grown up in a difficult household. Their father, Robert Martin, had been controlling and emotionally abusive. Their mother, Linda, had left when Jessica was 16 and Claire was 12. After their mother left, their father became even more controlling, especially toward Jessica. My father had very specific ideas about what Jessica should do with her life, Claire explained. He wanted her to become a lawyer, which she did, but he also wanted to control every other aspect of her life, who she dated, where she lived, everything. Jessica had moved out as soon as she could, at age 22, after finishing law school. She cut off contact with her father, but according to Claire, their father never stopped trying to find ways to control Jessica's life. He would show up at her office unannounced, Claire said. He would call her constantly. About 3 years ago, Jessica got a restraining order against him. He wasn't supposed to contact her anymore. Detective Reed asked if Claire knew whether their father had tried to contact Jessica recently. Claire hesitated. Then she said, "About 2 weeks before Jessica's birthday, she told me that our father had been trying to reach her again. He'd been sending letters to her house. She didn't open them. She just threw them away." Detective Reed made a note to look into Robert Martin. Robert Martin was 67 years old. He lived alone in a small apartment in Quincy, a city about 15 miles south of Boston. He'd retired from his job as an accountant 5 years earlier. When Detective Reed and his partner arrived at Robert's apartment on May 18th, Robert seemed genuinely shocked to hear that Jessica was missing. "Missing? What do you mean missing?" Robert asked. Detective Reed explained the situation. Robert's reaction was difficult to read. He seemed concerned, but there was also an odd defensiveness in his tone. "Have you been in contact with Jessica recently?" Detective Reed asked. "No," Robert said. "She won't talk to me. She got that restraining order. I'm not allowed to contact her." "But you've been sending her letters?" Robert hesitated. Then he admitted, "Yes, I've been writing to her. I just wanted to reconnect. I wanted to apologize for the past. I'm an old man. I wanted to make things right before it's too late." Detective Reed asked if Robert knew anything about Jessica's whereabouts. Robert said no. He agreed to provide an alibi for the night of May 15th. He'd been home alone, watching television. No one could verify this, but there was also no evidence placing him at Jessica's house that night. As Detective Reed left, he had the feeling that Robert Martin was hiding something. But what? On May 22nd, 1 week after Jessica's disappearance, Detective Reed received a call that changed the direction of the investigation. A park ranger at Whispering Pines Forest Preserve had seen the news coverage about Jessica Martin's disappearance. The ranger, a man named David Chen, had something to report. "I think I saw her," David told Detective Reed, "about a week before she went missing. On May 8th, a woman matching her description was here at the preserve. She was alone. She seemed to be looking for something specific." Detective Reed drove to Whispering Pines immediately. David Chen showed him the area where he'd seen the woman. It was a remote section of the forest, accessible only by a small dirt trail. There was a clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. In the center of the clearing, there was an old stone structure. It looked like the remnants of a foundation, perhaps from an old cabin or building that had once stood there. David explained that this area was rarely visited by hikers. It was off the main trails. Most people didn't even know it existed. Detective Reed searched the area carefully, and then, hidden beneath some fallen branches near the stone foundation, he found something, a small metal box, about the size of a shoebox. Inside the box, there were documents, old letters, photographs, and a handwritten note on a piece of paper. The note read, "If you're reading this, it means I finally found the courage. The truth is buried here. Everything my father tried to hide, everything I've been running from, I'm going back to face it. If I don't return, this is the proof." The note was signed by Jessica Martin. The documents in the box revealed a secret that Jessica had been carrying for years. When Jessica was 16 years old, her mother Linda had left the family. That's what Jessica and Claire had always been told. Their father had said that Linda had abandoned them, that she didn't want to be a mother anymore. But according to the documents in the box, that wasn't true. There were letters written by Linda Martin, dated from 2001. The letters were addressed to Jessica, but Jessica had never received them. In the letters, Linda explained that she hadn't abandoned her daughters. She'd been forced to leave. According to Linda's account, Robert Martin had been physically abusive. Linda had tried to leave him multiple times, but Robert had threatened her. He'd told her that if she tried to take the children, he would make sure she never saw them again. He had connections. He had money. He would win in court. Linda wrote that she'd made the impossible decision to leave alone, hoping that once she established herself in a safe place, she could come back for her daughters. But Robert had made sure that never happened. He'd moved. He'd changed his phone number. He'd made it impossible for Linda to find Jessica and Claire. Linda's letters described years of searching, private investigators, legal battles, dead ends. She'd written to Jessica multiple times, sending letters to addresses she thought might, but those letters had been intercepted by Robert. The last letter in the box was dated 2019. Linda wrote, "Jessica, if you ever find these letters, please know that I never stopped loving you. I never stopped looking for you. I'm living in Oregon now. I'm still looking. I hope someday you'll find me." Detective Reed immediately began investigating Linda Martin's whereabouts. Records showed that Linda Martin had indeed been living in Oregon. But here's where things got more complicated. Linda Martin had died in 2021. She'd passed away from cancer at the age of 63. She'd never reconnected with her daughters. When Detective Reed shared this information with Claire, she was devastated. She'd had no idea that their mother had been trying to find them all those years. But this raised an important question. If Linda had died in 2021, why had Jessica been searching for answers in 2023? What had triggered her to finally investigate her mother's disappearance? The answer came from Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Jessica's therapist. With Claire's permission as next of kin, Dr. Mitchell revealed that Jessica had recently discovered the truth about her mother. In early 2023, Jessica had hired a private investigator to look into her mother's whereabouts. The investigator had found records showing that Linda had died in Oregon. But the investigator had also found something else, a safety deposit box that Linda had maintained for years. The box contained letters, photographs, and other documents that Linda had hoped to someday give to Jessica and Claire. Jessica had traveled to Oregon in March 2023 to access the safety deposit box. That's when she'd discovered the full truth about her father's lies and her mother's desperate attempts to reconnect. According to Dr. Mitchell, Jessica had been struggling with this revelation. She'd been angry, she'd been grieving, and she'd been planning something. On May 25th, 10 days after her disappearance, Jessica Martin was found alive. A motel clerk in Burlington, Vermont, about 200 miles north of Boston, recognized Jeff from news coverage. The woman staying in room 12 matched Jessica's description. The clerk contacted local police. Officers arrived at the motel and knocked on the door of room 12. Jessica answered. She was alive. She was physically unharmed, but she looked exhausted and emotionally drained. Detective Reed was contacted immediately. He drove to Burlington to bring Jessica back to Boston. During the drive, Jessica finally explained what had happened. Jessica told Detective Reed that she had been planning her disappearance for weeks. After discovering the truth about her mother, Jessica had become consumed with anger toward her father. She'd wanted to confront him, but she'd also wanted to protect herself legally. Jessica had been gathering evidence. The documents in the box at Whispering Pines were copies of her mother's letters and other proof of Robert's abuse and manipulation. Jessica had buried them in the forest as a safety measure. If anything happened to her, the evidence would eventually be found. On May 15th, the day of her birthday party, Jessica had made a final decision. She was going to disappear temporarily, forcing an investigation that would expose her father's lies. She wanted the police to dig into her past. She wanted her father to face consequences. So here's how she did it. Earlier in the day, before the party, Jessica had driven to Whispering Pines. She'd buried the box of documents. That's why there was soil in her trunk. During the party, Jessica had acted normally, but at 11:47 p.m., when she went upstairs, she didn't stay in her bedroom. Instead, she'd quietly gone down the back staircase that led to the basement. This staircase was in a part of the house that guests rarely used. In the basement, Jessica had a change of clothes waiting. She'd also prepared a small bag with cash, a burner phone, and essential items. Jessica had left through the basement's small window. It was a tight fit, but she managed. This window faced the backyard, away from the security cameras. She'd timed it carefully. The backyard was dark, and all the guests were inside the house. Jessica had walked through her backyard, climbed over the back fence into her neighbor's yard, and made her way to a side street where she'd parked a rental car earlier that day. She'd driven north, staying off major highways. She'd checked into the motel in Burlington under a fake name. Her plan had been to stay hidden for about 2 weeks, giving police time to investigate. She'd expected them to find the documents at Whispering Pines. She'd expected her father to be questioned. But what Jessica hadn't fully anticipated was how worried everyone would be, how hard the police would search, how much media attention the case would get. By May 25th, Jessica realized her plan had gone too far. She was ready to come back. Jessica Martin returned to Boston on May 25th. She was not arrested, but she did face legal consequences for filing a false report and wasting police resources. Ultimately, the charges were reduced given the circumstances of her situation and the genuine abuse she'd experienced in her past. Robert Martin was questioned extensively. While he wasn't charged with a crime related to Jessica's disappearance, the investigation did uncover evidence of his past abuse and manipulation. Claire Martin filed for a permanent restraining order against her father on behalf of both herself and Jessica. Jessica took a leave of absence from her law firm. She spent several months in therapy, working through the trauma of her childhood and the grief of learning about her mother's death. The question everyone kept asking Jessica was, why? Why go to such extreme lengths? Why not just confront your father directly? Why disappear? Jessica's answer was always the same. I wanted people to see what he did. I wanted there to be a record. I wanted him to know that I wasn't going to let him control my life anymore. Maybe it was the wrong way to do it, but at the time, it felt like the only way. It's been several months since Jessica Martin returned. She's resumed her work as an attorney. She's slowly rebuilding relationships with friends who felt betrayed by her disappearance. Her sister Claire has been supportive, though their relationship has been strained by everything that happened. The case is officially closed. Jessica is no longer missing. The mystery of how she left the house has been solved. But some questions remain. Did Jessica really plan all of this alone, or did someone help her? Jessica insists she acted entirely on her own, but some investigators privately wonder if she had assistance. Was her disappearance really about exposing her father, or was there something else Jessica was running from? Some of her friends have suggested that Jessica's explanation doesn't fully add up, that there may be details she's still keeping private. And the biggest question, was it worth it? Jessica got what she wanted. Her father's abuse is now on record. The truth about her mother is known, but the cost was high. Trust was broken. Relationships were damaged. And Jessica herself admits that the weight of what she did still haunts her. In her own words, "I thought if I disappeared, everything would become clear. People would understand what I'd been through. But the truth is, disappearing didn't solve anything. It just created new problems." Maybe the real courage wasn't in running away. Maybe it was in staying and facing everything head on. I'm still learning that lesson. Jessica Martin walked up those stairs on her 38th birthday and vanished in front of 25 witnesses. She reappeared 10 days later with an explanation. The case is solved. But for Jessica, the real journey is just beginning.